July 1976. The French Riviera. Beneath one of the wealthiest streets in Nice, a flashlight is moving through a tunnel that should not exist. It is 80 centimeters wide. It was dug by hand, at night, over 2 months. And it ends at a wall of reinforced concrete almost 2 meters thick. Behind that wall is one of the most secure bank vaults in Europe. By Monday morning, everything inside it will be gone. When the staff arrive that Monday to open the vault, the door refuses to move. The time lock has released. The combination is correct. And several tons of steel simply will not turn. It takes hours and cutting equipment to get in. And when the door finally comes away, the men standing in the doorway find a crime with no witnesses, no fingerprints, no alarm, and no violence. They find hundreds of safe deposit boxes cut open. They find the floor ankle-deep in other people's paper. And they find that the vault door had been welded shut from the inside. And on the wall, the thieves had left a sentence. Sans armes, ni haine, ni violence, without weapons, without hatred, without violence. 50 years later, not 1 franc of what left that vault has ever been officially recovered. This is how it was done, and this is how the man who took the credit for it walked out of a French courthouse through a window. In 1976, Nice is the capital of the French Riviera, 20 kilometers from Monaco, a city of 5-star hotels, casinos, and old money that prefers not to be looked at too closely. Its mayor is Jacques Médecin, the son of the previous mayor, running the city like a family business. Remember that name. It comes back at the end of this story in a way nobody could have planned. The main artery of the city is Avenue Jean Médecin, named after the mayor's father. And on that avenue stands a branch of the Société Générale. Above ground, it is an ordinary bank. The wealth is downstairs. The vault holds roughly 4,000 private safe deposit boxes, jewelry from the villas in the hills above the coast, gold, bearer bonds, securities that legally belong to whoever is holding them with no name attached to them at all, and cash that appears on no tax declaration anywhere in France. That last detail matters more than it sounds. A safe deposit box on the Riviera in 1976 is where money goes when it does not want to be counted, which means that if this room is ever emptied, a large share of the people who lost something will never be able to say out loud what it was. It is close to a perfect target, enormous value stored in a single room by people who cannot afford to describe what they own. And in the spring of 1976, a well-dressed customer walks into that branch and asks to rent a box. The bank considers the vault impregnable, and on paper it is. The walls are reinforced concrete, 1 meter 80 thick. The door is a steel slab weighing several tons, and it closes on a time lock that no employee can override. That is the part worth sitting with. Once the vault is set on a Friday evening, it cannot be opened by anyone until Monday morning. Not by the branch manager, not by head office, not by the police, and not by the men who installed it. There are no cameras inside the vault. There are no motion detectors inside the vault. There is no alarm inside the vault at all. That is not negligence, it is logic. Every defense this bank has ever built faces the street. The cameras watch the doors. The alarms cover the windows. The reasoning behind it is simple, and for a century it has been correct. To rob a vault, you first have to get into the building, and nobody gets into the building. The bank has protected itself perfectly, and it has protected itself against exactly the crime it expected. Nobody has ever protected the floor. In the spring of 1976, a quiet, well-dressed man rents a safe deposit box at the branch on Avenue Jean Médecin. He gives a name. He pays on time. He visits his box like any other client. Afterwards, not one member of staff will remember anything unusual about him. What he is actually doing on those visits is surveying. Every trip downstairs tells him something. How far below street level the vault sits, which way the corridor runs, where the racks stand in relation to the outside walls. He is not planning to carry anything out. He is building a map. And then, according to the story that has been told ever since, including by the man himself, he runs a test. On one visit, he leaves something inside his box, a wind-up alarm clock set to ring in the middle of the night. The logic is elegant. If that vault has hidden microphones or seismic sensors in the walls or acoustic detection of any kind, then a bell ringing inside a sealed steel room at 3 in the morning will set them off. The police will come. The bank will open the vault, and the customer will have learned at no risk whatsoever that the room can hear. Days later, he comes back and opens his box. The clock has run down. It rang in the dark for as long as it had spring left in it. Nobody came. The fortress is deaf, and somewhere in Nice, a plan that had been theoretical for months becomes a schedule. Beneath Nice runs a second city. The Paillon, the river the city grew up on, was covered over in the 19th century, and now runs through the middle of Nice inside a culvert, out of sight, straight out to the sea. Around it spreads a network of storm drains and sewer galleries, some of them wide enough and tall enough to walk through standing up. And here is the part that makes the whole thing possible. Those galleries are not secret. The plans are public, held by the city, and anyone can consult them. So the plan begins in an office, with paper, sewer plans laid over street plans, distances above ground matched against distances below. Weeks of that, before anyone picks up a tool. What they are looking for is a gallery that runs close to the Société Générale, not underneath the vault, just near it. They find one, and between that gallery and the concrete shell of the vault lie 8 meters of earth. 8 meters, no camera watches them, no guard patrols them, no security assessment in the history of that bank has ever listed them as a weakness, because to use them, somebody would have to dig through them by hand, in the dark, inside a live sewer, for months, and get away with it every single night. Getting to the spot at all means carrying timber, tools, cable and lighting hundreds of meters underground, past storm grates, through water, every trip in and every trip back out without leaving one thing on the surface for anybody to notice. The men who will do the digging are told the job will take 2 weeks. It takes 2 months. This is not 2 or 3 men. By most accounts, somewhere between 15 and 20 people are involved before it is over. Local men and professionals brought in from the Marseille underworld, working in shifts. When the story finally breaks, the French press will give them a name that sticks: La Gang des Égoutiers, the sewer gang. The tunnel they dig is roughly 80 centimeters across, wide enough to work in on your knees or your side, not wide enough to turn around in. One man cuts the face, one drags the spoil back in buckets, one shores the roof behind them with timber, like a mine, because 8 meters of Riviera hillside above your head does not need a reason to come down. The earth has to go somewhere, and there are tons of it. It goes into the storm water of the gallery behind them, bucket by bucket, and the current carries it away toward the Mediterranean. The evidence disposes of itself every night for 2 months. They tap an electrical line for light. They pump air down the shaft so the man at the face can breathe. They bring rafts to move equipment through the deeper water. And by the accounts that survive, they turn a section of that gallery into something closer to a work camp than a crime scene. Tables, mattresses, supplies, somewhere to sleep between shifts, under a street where the shops are opening 8 meters above their heads. Then the summer storms come off the coast and the gallery floods. Everything stops. The water rises and the tunnel either holds or 2 months of work fills with mud in an afternoon. By the middle of July, the face of the tunnel reaches the foundations. Above their heads now is the floor slab of the vault itself, reinforced concrete, and behind it, 4,000 boxes. Breaking through that slab will take days of drilling and cutting, and the noise cannot be allowed to reach the street. Worse, for every hour they spend under it, the room above them could be opened on an ordinary working morning. So they wait for the only stretch of days when the room above them is guaranteed to be sealed and empty. In 1976, Bastille Day falls on a Wednesday. That Friday is the 16th of July. The vault closes on its time lock on Friday evening, and it cannot be opened again by anyone for any reason until Monday the 19th. 3 days, no staff, no override, and the safest room in Nice locked from the outside, with no way for anybody to look in. On the night of Friday, the 16th of July, the last centimeters of concrete give way. For the first time in the history of that branch, a man is standing inside the vault of the Société Générale without anybody having opened the door. What happens next is not a robbery in any sense a film would recognize. There is no rush, there is no alarm to beat, there is nobody to threaten, because there is nobody there. There is only a sealed steel room, 4,000 boxes, and 3 days. The first thing they do is make sure it stays that way. From the inside, they weld the vault door shut. They have the equipment for it. By most accounts, around 30 tanks of acetylene went down into that sewer over the preceding weeks. Some of it for the boxes, some of it for the door. And that is the moment the plan stops being clever and becomes something else. From then on, nothing on earth is getting into that vault before Monday. Not a guard, not a technician, not the police. The thieves have taken the bank's single best defense, a door that nobody can open in a hurry, and turned it around to point at the bank. Then they start on the boxes. 4,000 of them, in steel racks from the floor to the ceiling, opened one at a time by hand with crowbars and cutting gear. And the work is sorted like a production line. Gold and cash are packed to leave. Jewelry is packed to leave. Anything that can be traced, registered securities, deeds, documents with names on them, goes on the floor, because carrying it out is all risk and no reward. By Sunday, the floor of the vault is ankle-deep in other people's paper. They work Friday night, all of Saturday, and into Sunday, sleeping in shifts. And by most accounts, this is the detail France has never let go of. They stop to eat properly. Foie gras, bread, red wine, at a table. Inside the vault, they are emptying. Whether that happened exactly as it has been told, no investigator has ever been able to confirm. What is not in question are the photographs taken on Monday. They show a room that people had been living in for 3 days. The ending is not triumphant. It rains on the coast that weekend. The water starts rising in the gallery behind them, and the tunnel is their only way out. So they leave early, with boxes still untouched, and even so, when the police count them on Monday, 371 safe deposit boxes stand open and empty. The official estimate settles at around 46 million francs in cash, gold, securities, and valuables. Other estimates run higher, 50 million, 60 million. Every one of those numbers is a guess, and every one of them is probably low for exactly the reason this room was chosen in the first place. A significant number of the people who lost something in that vault never filed a claim describing what it was. Before they drop down through the floor for the last time, they do one more thing. On the wall of the vault, they write a sentence. Sans armes, ni haine, ni violence. Without weapons, without hatred, without violence. According to accounts that later came from the gang itself, those words were not one man's idea. The letters were shared out, each of them writing a part of it, so that the sentence belonged to all of them. And it was not only a signature. If they were ever caught, it was meant to work as an argument. Whatever else this was, nobody had been hurt. It is a strange thing to write on the wall of a room you are robbing. It is also, as public relations, close to perfect. Within a week, that sentence is on the front page of every newspaper in France, and the story quietly stops being about 4,000 violated safe deposit boxes and starts being about the men who left a note. Then the torch beams go down through the floor, and the vault goes dark. No gunfire, no alarms, no chase. Nobody anywhere in France knows that a crime has been committed. And there are still 36 hours to go before anyone finds out. Monday, the 19th of July, 1976. The branch opens the way it has opened every working morning for decades. The time lock releases. The combination is entered. The wheel is turned. The door does not move. And there is no reason for it not to move. They can feel the mechanism release. The staff try again. They call head office. Head office calls the manufacturer's technicians, and the technicians arrive, work on it, and reach a conclusion nobody in that building wants to hear. The door is not jammed. It is fixed in place. Something is holding it from the other side. It takes hours and cutting equipment to open the safest room in Nice from the outside. When the door finally comes away, the light goes in and everything is wrong at once. Paper to the ankles, steel racks torn open along an entire wall, food, bedding, and rubbish on the floor, a hole in the concrete going straight down into the dark. And in the middle of it, on the wall, one sentence, written by hand. By that evening, the story has a name it will never lose. Le casse du siècle, the heist of the century. The investigators who climb down into that hole do not find a crime scene. They find a construction site. Timber shoring, properly done, electrical cable, professionally run, ventilation, rafts and rails for moving material, tools stacked in order because the men who used them had no reason at all to hurry. The tunnel tells them precisely how it was done. It refuses to tell them one single thing about who did it. There are no useful fingerprints. The tools are ordinary and could have been bought anywhere in France. The timber is untraceable, and the spoil, the tons of earth that could have told them how many men worked down there and for how long, went out to sea months ago, bucket by bucket. And the sewer at the far end is not a tunnel with two ends. It is a network under an entire city, with dozens of ways in and dozens of ways out. Meanwhile, the press does the arithmetic of embarrassment. 2 months of digging. A few meters from a patrolled street. under the best-known address in Nice. Something like 20 men coming and going through the sewers of a major French city for 8 weeks, and not one report, not one complaint, not one patrol that thought to look down. Suspects are brought in and released. The file grows and goes nowhere. What finally breaks the case has nothing to do with the tunnel at all. A perfect crime has one weakness that no amount of planning can design out of it. It has to be shared. Whatever came out of that vault had to be divided between 15 or 20 men, and then it had to be spent. Gold has to be sold. Cash has to be moved. Jewelry has to be broken up and passed on. And every one of those transactions puts a stranger in the room. The accounts of what happened in October 1976 differ on the details. In one version, a former girlfriend of one of the crew goes to the police. In another, low-level men are picked up trying to move gold that leads back to the bank. Every version agrees on what happened next. One of them, in custody, started talking, and once he started, he did not stop at himself. He gave investigators the crew, and the name of the man, they say, organized the whole thing. Which brings us back to the mayor of Nice. On the 27th of October 1976, 3 months after the robbery, police arrest a 44-year-old photographer named Albert Spaggiari. They arrest him at Nice airport as he comes home from an official trip abroad, where he had been traveling as the personal photographer of Jean Médecin, the mayor of Nice. The man accused of tunneling into the vault under Avenue Jean Médecin had spent that week photographing the mayor, whose family the avenue is named after. His history explains some of it. Spaggiari enlisted as a paratrooper at 19 and went to the war in Indochina. He served time in a military prison for a hold-up. He came home into the politics of French Algeria, joined the OAS, and went to prison a second time for it. By the mid-1970s, he is living outside Nice on a small holding with chickens, running a photography business, and photographing the most powerful man in the city. He is also, investigators find, a customer of the Société Générale branch on Avenue Jean Médecin, a man who rented a safe deposit box in the spring of 1976. The quiet customer, the one whose alarm clock rang all night in a room where nobody came. In custody, he does not behave like a man in trouble. He does not confess, and he does not deny. He discusses the job the way an engineer discusses a bridge. He is polite with investigators, quotable with journalists, and completely uninterested in giving up a single other name. The state, for its part, is confident. It has the organizer, the system lost to him 3 times, the vault, the tunnel, the 3 months of nothing, and it is not going to lose a 4th. The 10th of March, 1977. Spaggiari is brought to the Palais de Justice in Nice, to the office of the examining magistrate, Judge Richard Bouaziz. It is a routine session. Documents, questions, his lawyer present, guards outside the door, an office 1 floor above the street. At some point, he is handed a document or asks to look at one and steps toward the window. And then he goes through it. He lands on the roof of a car parked below, rolls off it into the street, and gets onto the back of a motorcycle that is waiting with its engine running. By the time anyone reaches the window, he is gone. The story goes that the owner of the dented car later received an envelope in the post containing a check for 5,000 francs and no explanation. Whether or not that is true, France decided that it was, because by then it was exactly the kind of thing he was supposed to do. The escape finishes what the robbery started. The bank had been certain that the vault could not be entered. It was emptied over a weekend. The police had been certain that a crime that size could not stay anonymous. Most of it did, and the justice system had been certain it could hold one middle-aged photographer in a guarded office with a magistrate and a lawyer in the room. He was never in a French courtroom again. Albert Spaggiari was tried in his absence and sentenced to life imprisonment. He stayed free for 12 years. He had plastic surgery to change his face. He is believed to have spent much of that time in South America and to have come back into France quietly more than once to see his mother and his wife. He also published 3 books about it and gave a television interview to the most famous literary program in France, recorded abroad and delivered to the studio on tape, while every police force in the country was looking for him. He died on the 8th of June, 1989, of throat cancer in a house in northern Italy. He was 56. 2 days later, his body was found in France, outside his mother's house, driven across the border and left there so that the most wanted man in the country could be buried at home. The money was never recovered, not 1 franc of the 46 million. And the story refused to stay finished. In 2010, a figure from the Marseille underworld named Jacques Cassandri published a book claiming that he had run the operation and that Spaggiari, the face of the heist of the century, had been a minor player who took the credit for it. The book brought him to court in Marseille in 2018, more than 40 years after the weekend in question. He was acquitted of laundering the proceeds of the robbery and convicted on other charges. So even the question of whose crime it was has never really been settled. The vault was rebuilt. The tunnel was filled in. The bank on Avenue Jean Médecin is still there. The only thing anybody remembers is the sentence on the wall.